I came home late that evening, exhausted from another long day at the office. The scent of something rich and savory lingered in the air. Lasagna, maybe. Lisa always knew exactly what to make when she wanted me in a good mood. "Hey, babe," she called from the kitchen, her voice unusually chipper. "I was hoping you'd be home soon. I have some news." I loosened my tie, stepping into the warm glow of our cozy kitchen. Lisa stood by the counter, a beaming smile on her face, her hazel eyes sparkling with excitement. Her hands fidgeted with the edge of a folded napkin, a telltale sign that she was nervous. "What is it?" I asked, taking a seat at the table. She inhaled deeply, her chest rising and falling before she let out a tiny laugh, almost giddy. Then, she reached into the back pocket of her jeans and pulled out a small black and white printout, sliding it across the table toward me. It took a moment for my brain to catch up with my eyes. "An ultrasound." "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice barely containing her excitement. My heart lurched. "Pregnant?" She nodded, her grin widening. 3 months. A rush of emotions flooded me all at once. Joy, disbelief, nervous excitement. I hadn't expected this, but the thought of becoming a father suddenly filled me with a strange warmth. I glanced at the ultrasound again, feeling a slow, creeping realization. Something about the image caught my eye. The date in the upper right corner. I stared at it, my breath hitching. 5 months. Not 3. I blinked, my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe I was reading it wrong? Maybe it was some kind of technical detail I didn't understand? I forced a smile, lifting my gaze back to Lisa. 3 months? Yeah. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I know it's a surprise, but I didn't want to tell you right away until I was sure everything was okay. The doctor says everything looks perfect." I swallowed hard, glancing down at the ultrasound again. My fingers traced the printed numbers, my stomach twisting into knots. She was lying. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. But the math didn't add up. 3 months. 5 months. A 2-month difference. I looked back at Lisa, still smiling, still glowing with excitement. Had she seen it? Did she know? Or was this some kind of mistake? The air suddenly felt thick, suffocating. I wanted to ask, to point it out, but my mouth wouldn't form the words. Instead, I forced another smile and nodded. "This is incredible," I said, my voice slightly uneven. Lisa exhaled in relief, throwing her arms around my neck. "I'm so happy, Jonathan." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close, feeling her warmth against me. But inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs, my mind spinning in a dozen directions. 3 months. 5 months. I needed answers. The ultrasound photo burned in my hand as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Lisa had fallen asleep quickly, curled up beside me, her breathing soft and steady. But I was wide awake, my mind tangled in a web of unease. I kept replaying the moment in the kitchen, the excitement in her voice, the way her hands trembled slightly when she handed me the picture. Had she noticed the date? Did she already know? I turned my head to the nightstand, where the ultrasound rested. The black and white image was blurry, the little shape in the middle indistinct, but the text on the screen was clear. 5 months. I rubbed my face, trying to push down the growing pit in my stomach. There had to be a reasonable explanation. A mix-up at the clinic? A typo on the image? Maybe she had just miscalculated the weeks. But 2 whole months? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Maybe I was overthinking this. Maybe I was looking for something that wasn't there. Yet, deep inside, I knew that wasn't true. The numbers didn't lie. I needed to ask her about it. But how? I couldn't just blurt out, "Hey, Lisa, I think you're lying about how far along you are." That wouldn't go over well. If it was an innocent mistake, I'd come across as paranoid. If it wasn't, I didn't want to finish that thought. Instead, I decided to wait. Maybe I could find another way to confirm the timeline. I just needed more information. The next morning, Lisa was in a great mood, humming to herself as she cooked breakfast. She moved around the kitchen effortlessly, making eggs and toast like it was just another day. "How'd you sleep?" she asked, glancing at me as I sat at the table. "Good," I lied. "You?" She smiled. "Like a baby." I think the excitement wore me out. I nodded, sipping my coffee, my mind working. I had to approach this carefully. So, I said casually, when did you first suspect? Lisa paused mid-motion, flipping the eggs. What do you mean? You said you're 3 months along. That means you found out about a month ago, right? She hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. Yeah, about that. I studied her face. What made you take the test? Lisa laughed softly, plating the eggs. You know, the usual. I was feeling off, tired, a little nauseous. I thought it was just stress, but then I missed my period, so I took a test. And well, here we are. She placed my plate in front of me and kissed my forehead. Why all the questions? I forced a chuckle. Just curious. It's all happening so fast. She grinned. Tell me about it. I watched as she turned back to the stove, but my stomach churned. Something wasn't adding up. If she'd only found out a month ago, why did the ultrasound say 5 months? I needed more than just my gut feeling. I needed proof, and I knew exactly where to start. I spent the rest of the day pretending everything was fine. I kissed Lisa goodbye as she left for work. I answered emails, took a few calls, and even convinced myself for a brief moment that maybe, just maybe, I was making a big deal out of nothing. But the moment I was alone, my doubts crept back in like an unwelcome shadow. I retrieved the ultrasound from my nightstand and studied it again. The date in the corner was clear as day, 5 months. Not 3. Lisa wasn't just mistaken. She was lying. The question was, why? I had to be smart about this. If I confronted her too soon, she'd have time to spin a story or cover her tracks. If I wanted real answers, I needed to gather my own information first. I decided to start with the basics. Sitting at my desk, I grabbed my laptop and typed into the search bar. How accurate are ultrasound dates? A flood of medical articles popped up. Skimming through them, I learned that first trimester ultrasounds were usually the most accurate in determining gestational age. The farther along a pregnancy was, the harder it became to pinpoint exact timing. But here's the key detail. A 5-month ultrasound wouldn't be mistaken for 3 months. I felt my chest tighten. That meant the date on Lisa's scan wasn't a fluke. It was the truth. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. If Lisa had been pregnant for 5 months, then that meant I clenched my jaw, pushing the thought away. I couldn't go there. Not yet. Instead, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my messages. If Lisa had known she was pregnant for longer than she claimed, maybe there were clues in our conversations. I searched back 3 months, checking for anything unusual. Nothing. Then, out of curiosity, I went back 5 months. And that's when I found something. A message from Lisa, dated almost exactly 5 months ago. Lisa, hey, I'm going to stay at my sister's this weekend. Just need some time to clear my head. I remembered that weekend. It had seemed normal enough at the time. Lisa had been a little distant, but I'd figured it was just stress. But now I wasn't so sure. I clicked her sister's contact and stared at the name for a moment. Should I call? Ask if Lisa had really stayed with her? No, that would be too suspicious. I needed to be subtle. I went back to my messages with Lisa and kept scrolling. A few days after that weekend, she had sent another message. Lisa, I've been feeling weird lately. Probably just stress, but I think I'm coming down with something. A sickness. Morning sickness? The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. Lisa had been pregnant for 5 months, not 3. That meant she had known long before she told me. And if she had kept it a secret for that long, I shut my laptop, my hands clammy. She was hiding something. I just had to figure out what. That evening, I watched Lisa carefully. Every movement, every word, every little glance. She was the same as always, smiling, laughing, cooking dinner like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't hiding something. I played along, acting just as normal. But the ultrasound still sat heavy in my pocket, a quiet weight pressing against my doubts. I needed more information, so I tried a test. As we sat at the table eating, I casually asked, "When's your next doctor's appointment?" Lisa didn't flinch. "Next Wednesday. Just a routine checkup." I nodded, pretending to focus on my food. "You don't mind if I come, do you?" Her fork paused for just a second. just long enough for me to catch it. Then she smiled. Of course not. I'd love that. I returned the smile, but inside, I was bracing myself. If she was lying, that appointment would prove it. Later that night, while Lisa was in the shower, I went into her purse. I hated doing it. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped through his wife's things. But I wasn't the kind of man who ignored glaring inconsistencies either. I found her appointment card stuffed in the side pocket. My breath caught in my throat as I read the details. Dr. Mary Ann Foster. OB/GYN. Last visit, 5 weeks ago. Next visit, Friday, 10 a.m. Friday, not Wednesday. And the last visit was 5 weeks ago. That didn't line up with what she had told me. If she had only been 3 months pregnant, she would have had an appointment more recently than that. I clenched my jaw, my mind spinning. She was lying. But why? I slipped the card back into her purse exactly as I found it and stepped away, my heart pounding. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. This was deliberate. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind kept circling the same question. What was Lisa hiding? By morning, I had a plan. If she wouldn't give me the truth, I would find it myself. So I decided to do something I never thought I would. I was going to follow my wife. Friday morning arrived, and I could feel the tension in my chest before I even opened my eyes. Lisa was already up, moving quietly around the house, getting ready for an appointment she thought I didn't know about. I listened from the bedroom as she hummed softly, her footsteps light as she made her way down the hall. For a split second, I considered dropping the whole thing. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this. But then I remembered the ultrasound, the dates, the lies. No, I wasn't imagining this. Something was wrong. I stayed in bed until I heard the front door click shut. Then, I jumped up, threw on some clothes, and grabbed my keys. I was going to find out exactly where my wife was going. Lisa's car was easy to follow. She wasn't expecting to be tailed, so she drove normally, stopping at lights, keeping to the speed limit. I kept a few cars behind, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. 15 minutes later, she pulled into a small medical plaza on the other side of town. Not her usual clinic. I parked across the lot, keeping my head low as she stepped out of her car. She looked calm, relaxed. She smoothed her shirt over her stomach and walked inside, disappearing through a set of glass doors. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't her OB/GYN's office. So what the hell was she doing here? I needed to get closer. Leaving my car, I walked across the lot, trying to look casual. When I reached the entrance, I took a quick glance at the directory posted outside. There were a few offices, pediatrics, dermatology, even a small dental practice, but one name stood out. Dr. Andrew Carter, specialist in maternal-fetal medicine. Maternal-fetal medicine. High-risk pregnancies. Complications. Why would Lisa be seeing a specialist? My stomach twisted as I stepped inside. The waiting room was small, quiet. A receptionist sat behind a glass window, typing away at her computer. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. I couldn't exactly walk up and ask, "Hey, is my wife hiding a 5-month pregnancy from me?" Then I spotted Lisa. She was sitting across the room, staring down at her phone. She looked tense, not like she had at home. She checked the time, biting her lip, then glanced toward the hallway leading to the exam rooms. A few minutes later, a nurse stepped out and called her name. Lisa stood quickly, tucking her phone away, and disappeared down the hall. I felt frozen in place. I had come here looking for answers, but all I had now were more questions. Why was Lisa seeing a specialist? What was she hiding? And worst of all, why did she look so damn nervous? I sat in my car for nearly an hour, staring at the clinic's entrance, waiting for Lisa to come out. My mind was racing in every direction, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. Lisa wasn't just going to a routine appointment. She wasn't seeing her usual OB/GYN. She was seeing a maternal-fetal specialist. That meant one of two things. Either something was wrong with the pregnancy, or there was something about this pregnancy she hadn't told me. Every possible scenario played through my mind, and none of them ended in a way that made sense. Then, finally, the glass doors opened, and Lisa stepped outside. She looked different now, her face a little pale, her shoulders stiff. She walked straight to her car without checking her phone, without hesitating. Her expression wasn't that of a woman who had just heard good news. She looked worried. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, watching as she got into her car and pulled out of the parking lot. I waited a minute before following, keeping a safe distance. Lisa didn't drive home. Instead, she took a turn toward the west side of town, the area with little cafes and coffee shops, places she didn't usually go. I kept my distance as she pulled into the parking lot of a small corner cafe, the kind of place that had a handful of tables outside and barely enough room for a dozen customers inside. I parked a block away and walked up on foot, keeping my head down. Lisa had taken a seat outside, facing the street. She looked tense, fidgeting with the napkin in front of her. And then I saw him. A man walked up to her table, dressed casually in jeans and a dark button-down. He had an easy stride, comfortable, familiar, like he had done this before. Lisa's face lit up when she saw him. My stomach twisted into knots. She knew him. The man sat down, and they started talking. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see. The way she leaned in slightly. The way he reached across the table, touching her hand for a brief moment. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't imagining things. Lisa wasn't just lying about the pregnancy. She was lying about everything. I needed to know who he was. And I needed to know what the hell was going on. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stood across the street, watching Lisa and the man at the cafe. She was smiling now, but it wasn't the same easy, relaxed smile she gave me at home. This was different. It was tense, controlled, like she was saying one thing but feeling another. The man leaned forward, his elbows resting on the small round table between them. He wasn't just some stranger. There was a familiarity between them, an unspoken understanding. I needed to know who he was. Pulling out my phone, I quickly snapped a photo, zooming in just enough to catch his face clearly without being obvious. Then I turned away, heart racing, and walked back toward my car before I could do something reckless. I wanted to march over there. I wanted to demand answers. But if Lisa was already lying to me, then she'd only lie again. I needed proof. Sitting in my parked car a block away, I pulled up the photo on my phone. The man had sharp features, dark hair, maybe in his mid-30s. There was something about him. His confidence, the way he carried himself, that made my stomach twist even tighter. I didn't recognize him, but I knew someone who might. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Mark Davis. Mark had been my best friend since college. He ran his own private security firm now. He knew how to find people. I hit dial. Jonathan? Mark's voice came through, casual but alert. What's up? I need a favor, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's personal. There was a slight pause. Then, I'm listening. I sent him the photo. I need to know who this guy is, I said. Anything you can find. Name, job, where he's been the last few months. Mark exhaled, his tone shifting. He knew me well enough to tell when something was wrong. Give me a few hours, he said. I'll get back to you. Thanks, man. I hung up, my fingers gripping the phone tightly. Then I turned my gaze back toward the cafe, where Lisa was still sitting with the man. She was lying to me, and soon I was going to find out why. The hours crawled by as I waited for Mark to call back. I kept busy, sort of. I went home, made coffee, stared at the ultrasound again, and ran through every possible explanation in my head. None of them made sense. Lisa's pregnancy wasn't 3 months along. The appointment she lied about. The man at the cafe. Everything was pointing to something I didn't want to believe. And yet, I couldn't ignore it. Then, just after 6 p.m., my phone rang. Mark. I snatched it up immediately. Tell me you've got something. I've got something, he said, his voice low and serious. And you're not gonna like it. I braced myself. Go on. The guy in the photo? His name's Ryan Carter. He's a medical rep, works for a pharmaceutical company that supplies prenatal care products to clinics and hospitals. That includes maternal fetal specialists. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Ryan Carter, a medical rep, working with pregnancy clinics. Does he have any connection to Lisa? I asked, gripping the phone tighter. That's where it gets interesting, Mark said. I ran some background checks. Guess what? Lisa's clinic has a contract with his company. She must have met him there. My throat went dry. Lisa had been working at the same clinic for years. If this Ryan guy was involved in her field, that meant they could have known each other for a long time. Too long. Now, here's where things get messy, Mark continued. Ryan took a month-long leave of absence about 5 months ago. He left his job for exactly 4 weeks. My heart stopped. 5 months. The same time frame as Lisa's real pregnancy timeline. I swallowed hard. Where did he go? No record of travel, Mark said. But I did some digging. He spent most of that time off in the city, close to where Lisa works. I leaned back, my stomach twisting into knots. Lisa, 5 months pregnant. Ryan, took a leave of absence 5 months ago. Lisa, lying to me about her due date. Ryan, sitting with her at a cafe like it was nothing. The pieces were fitting together in the worst way imaginable. Jonathan. Mark's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I don't know what's going on here, but if I were you, I'd be careful. Careful. That word felt ridiculous. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't losing my mind. Lisa had been seeing another man, and now I needed the truth, even if it destroyed me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lisa's soft breathing beside me. She looked peaceful, unaware that her carefully constructed lie was crumbling. I wanted to shake her awake, shove the ultrasound in her face, demand she tell me the truth. But I needed to be smart. I needed to control my emotions. If she had lied about this, what else was she hiding? The next morning, I woke up before her. Lisa stirred as I got out of bed, stretching lazily. You're up early, she murmured. Couldn't sleep, I replied. Figured I'd get a head start on the day. She smiled, rolling onto her side. I was thinking we could go out tonight. Celebrate the baby. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, that sounds nice. In reality, I already had plans. I was going to follow her again. Lisa left for work at her usual time. I waited an hour, then made my move. I wasn't just going to follow her today. I was going to her clinic. I wanted to see if anyone there knew how long she had really been pregnant. Pulling into the parking lot, I sat in my car for a few minutes, watching the entrance. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, a detective investigating his own wife. Finally, I stepped out and walked toward the reception area. A young woman sat behind the counter, typing on her computer. She looked up and smiled. Can I help you? I hesitated for half a second, then forced a polite grin. Hey, yeah. My wife, Lisa. She works here. I was wondering if Dr. Foster is available. I wanted to ask a couple of questions about the pregnancy. The woman's face softened. Oh, congratulations. Dr. Foster is in with a patient, but I can leave her a message. That would be great, I said. Then, pretending to be casual, I added, Lisa's been so excited. She's been talking about this pregnancy for months. The woman nodded enthusiastically. Oh, I bet. I remember when she first came in. She was really nervous, but so happy when she got the confirmation. My chest tightened. Yeah, that must have been, what, 5 months ago? She blinked. Oh, yeah, I think so. My stomach turned. So it was true. Lisa had known for 5 months. She had lied to me this whole time. I forced another smile, muttered a quick thanks, and walked out. I barely made it to my car before I had to grip the steering wheel to steady myself. Lisa had been pregnant for 5 months. That meant she had conceived before she even told me. And I finally understood her plan. She wasn't planning to hide the truth forever. She was just delaying it. She thought she could lie about how far along she was. And when the baby came 2 months early, she'd just tell me it was premature. A perfectly crafted deception. But now, I knew. And I wasn't going to wait until the baby was born for her to finally tell me the truth. Lisa was going to confess tonight, one way or another. That night, I sat across from Lisa at the restaurant, watching her. She smiled, lifting her glass of sparkling water. To us, she said cheerfully. I forced a smile and clinked my glass against hers, but my mind was spinning. She thought I didn't know. She thought she had months to prepare her lie, to carefully craft her story so that when the baby was born 2 months early, she could play the concerned wife, the devastated mother of a premature child. She had planned every detail. But she hadn't planned for me to figure it out now. We ordered food, and Lisa kept talking about the baby, the nursery, name she liked. She was playing the role of a happy wife, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking about how to break her lie apart. Finally, when the waiter left and we were alone again, I leaned forward and said, "I stopped by your clinic today." Lisa blinked. "What?" "I wanted to surprise you," I lied, watching her reaction carefully. "I asked the receptionist about Dr. Foster, just to check in, but she told me something interesting." Lisa's fingers curled slightly around her napkin. "Oh," she said lightly, but I could already see the shift in her eyes. "She said you found out you were pregnant 5 months ago." Her smile faltered. I leaned in further, lowering my voice. "That's funny, isn't it? Because you told me you were 3 months along." Lisa's throat bobbed as she swallowed. She recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "Oh, that must be a mistake. Is it?" I cut her off, my voice firm. "Because I also saw the ultrasound." The color drained from her face. I had her. She inhaled sharply and set her fork down. "Jonathan, let's not do this here." I shook my head. "No, we're doing this now. You've been lying to me, Lisa. From the moment you told me you were pregnant, you've been lying." She glanced around the restaurant nervously, lowering her voice. "Please, can we just—" I didn't let her finish. "You were never 3 months pregnant. You were 5. And you weren't planning to tell me until the baby came early, were you?" Lisa's breathing had become uneven. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. I leaned closer. "So tell me, Lisa, why? Why did you lie?" For the first time since I had started speaking, she didn't have a quick response. That was all the answer I needed. She wasn't just lying about the pregnancy. She was lying about who the father was. Lisa sat frozen, her eyes darting around the restaurant like a trapped animal looking for an escape. But there was none. Not this time. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Waited for her to admit what I already knew. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet my gaze. "Jonathan," she whispered, "please, let's not do this here." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Why not? You didn't have a problem lying to me in our own home, lying to my face. What's stopping you from lying to me now?" Her lips parted like she was about to come up with another excuse, another quick deflection, but she must have seen it in my face. I wasn't buying it anymore. Her shoulders slumped. She looked down at her hands. And then, in the softest voice, she said it. "I was going to tell you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "When? When the baby came early? When you had no choice?" Lisa wiped at her eyes. "I never meant for it to happen like this. I was scared." "Scared of what, Lisa?" My voice was sharp. "Scared that I'd figure out the math? That I'd realize you were pregnant before we even—" I stopped myself, my jaw tightening. She flinched. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "Who is he?" Lisa looked away. I slammed my palm on the table, making her jump. "Who is he?" She swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. "Ryan." My blood turned ice cold. Ryan Carter. I had known it. The moment I saw them at the cafe, I knew it. I clenched my jaw. "How long?" She hesitated. But when she saw the look in my eyes, she gave up pretending. 6 months, she murmured. I let out a slow, controlled breath. 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of looking me in the eye every single day, sleeping next to me every single night, and pretending like everything was fine. My hands curled into fists under the table. "You planned to tell me the baby was premature," I said flatly. "You were going to let me raise another man's child." Tears streamed down Lisa's face now. "Jonathan, I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." I stared at her, my chest tightening with rage. "You didn't want to hurt me? Lisa, you destroyed me." She reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. I pulled away. "Please," she whispered. "I still love you." I scoffed. "You don't lie to the people you love." Her face crumpled. But I didn't care. I had my answer. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "We're done." Lisa's head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. "Jonathan, wait." But I didn't. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her behind, leaving us behind, because there was nothing left to save. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind was blank, yet racing all at once. Lisa had admitted it. She had been having an affair for 6 months. She had planned to let me raise another man's child, and she had only confessed because she had no other choice. She never loved me. She loved the lie, the security, the idea of keeping both worlds intact, until I ruined it for her. But I wasn't done. No, Lisa wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. She thought she could betray me, lie to me, and still walk away with her hands clean? Not a chance. The moment I got home, I called my lawyer. I need a paternity test. ASAP. He didn't ask questions. He knew my tone, knew that I wasn't messing around. I'll set it up. Does she know you want one? I let out a humorless laugh. Not yet, but she will. The test would have to wait until the baby was born. But that didn't mean I couldn't start putting my plan into motion now. By the next morning, I had met with my lawyer in person. I don't just want a divorce, I said coldly. I want to make sure she gets nothing. We went over every detail. We had a prenup, but Lisa would still try to fight for money. She would try to play the victim. But I had proof. I had her confession. Lisa's biggest mistake? Not realizing I had recorded our conversation. That's right. I had tapped my phone before I walked into that restaurant. Every lie, every admission, every pathetic excuse she had given me, it was all saved. And I was going to use it against her. Lisa had tried to control the narrative. She had planned to manipulate me into believing the baby was premature. She had planned to walk away looking innocent. So I decided to beat her at her own game. A week after our disastrous dinner, I sent the recording to her family, to our mutual friends, to Ryan's fiancée. Oh yeah, Ryan was engaged. And I made sure his fiancée heard every word of Lisa's confession. The fallout was glorious. Ryan's engagement? Over. His fiancée threw him out and blasted him all over social media. Lisa? Lisa became the woman who lied about her baby's father. The woman who planned to trap me into raising another man's child. She tried calling me, texting me, begging me to stop. I ignored every single message. She didn't deserve a response. The baby was born 2 months later. A healthy, full-term baby boy. Not premature. Not even close. Lisa didn't even bother trying to fake it. She knew I had one. The DNA test came back exactly how I expected. Not mine. The divorce? Finalized before she could even try to fight it. She walked away with nothing. No house. No money. No sympathy. Just the consequences of her own betrayal. It took time to heal. To move past the anger, the humiliation, the complete and utter disgust I felt. But eventually, I did. Lisa? Last I heard, she was struggling. Alone. Ryan refused to commit to her. Turns out, a man who cheats with you will cheat on you, too. She had thrown everything away for a lie. And in the end, she lost everything. Me? I walked away free. And I never looked back. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling so you never miss an update on more jaw-dropping real-life stories. Catch you in the next video.